there's a tremendous psychological value of you kissing your child's knee. It definitely takes care of the pain. But also there's a tremendous exchange of energy between you and your child. So how does it happen? What do you feel when you touch that painful spot? Is there ever any special feeling?
Warmth.
Warmth. All right. I have a better example. When you hug somebody, what do you feel?
Joy.
Well, besides the joy and the good feeling of the hug, it's warmth, right? What does the other person feel? Also warmth. Let's hope, right? So both of you feel warmth. Of course, there's the body temperature. However, there's this extra, like this tingly warmth that you feel. Something that we cannot explain with just regular Newtonian physics. Now, in Newtonian physics, we learn that, when you take two objects, let's say one is hot object, one is cold. You put them together, what happens? They equalize temperature. The hot object will give off heat to the cold one until eventually they equalize in their temperature. Now, what would the cold object feel? Heating up, right? How about the hot object?
Cooling down.
It would feel cooling down. Now, in our case, when we hug, we actually both feel the heat. So that's why we will try to explain the energy from quantum physical point of view. Newtonian physics really doesn't work right now. Now, I will be jumping back and forth with these ideas, so keep that in mind. Again, 2 hours for a whole day lecture. And also, I like to explain everything from a scientific point of view. My background is in engineering, which I really never used. I had never worked a day as an engineer. However, it helped me understand some of these things that came at me later on in life. There are always controversies about the energy. Recently, I've seen a show about a famous healer, an American healer, and they followed his work. They watched how he does his healing. And of course, like every other show, at the end, there was a scientist slash doctor slash expert who they asked after everything was done to explain this. Oh, this doesn't exist. That was the answer. Why? Well, it cannot be measured, so it doesn't exist. This energy is non-existent. So, okay, that same doctor is probably the reincarnation of the millions of people from 500 years ago who said the Earth was flat, right? And then the Earth was the center of the universe. And then that man will never fly. Anything heavier than air will never lift up. We'll never get on the moon, and so on. So the fact that we cannot measure it right now doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It just shows that we're still stupid. We don't know how to measure it. However, there are so many things that we can measure in our bodies that we can actually figure things out for ourselves. We can measure everything in our body, what we can measure in a radio or a TV. We have amps, ohms, volts. We have all these electromagnetic measurements in our bodies. We know that our bodies vibrate. We are electromagnetic in nature. We have EKGs, EEGs, all these machines that are based on electromagnetic currents. Our brains are loaded with electricity. Our bodies, everything is electromagnetic in nature. So, obviously we can measure these things. We can measure everything around us. And in modern physics, we have learned that, yes, everything vibrates. Everything is made up of tiny particles that vibrate. So, today, going from one idea to the next, of course, we will learn somehow to loosen up our brains and loosen up our thinking, and maybe change our thinking if it's needed. Again, if something cannot be measured, it doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. Now, you've had other experiences where you felt the energy besides the hug. Let's say you walk down the street and all of a sudden you feel somebody behind you. Does it happen to you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, how did you feel it?
I
Or just you turn around and there is somebody behind you. Or you stare at somebody at the movie theater and eventually they turn around. Right? Or you walk into a crowded room and just for some reason there's this one person you don't feel comfortable with. You may have never met before, but you just don't feel comfortable with them. Or the opposite, you're drawn to some person. You know, you just, whoa, you see the rainbow, fireworks, everything, right? So there's a certain attraction. Again, you can't explain it, but it works. It doesn't have to be, love at first sight. It can be just being attracted to a certain person on a different level. It doesn't have to be sensual or anything. It just, you click, right? So again, that can be explained through this energy. There are other examples of this energy going even longer distances, not just around you. Let's say you think of someone and the phone rings and that person is on the other line. Is there anyone who hasn't had that experience? I bet you may have a person that it happens with all the time. I have an aunt, I think about her, the phone will ring. So we practically have a competition who will grab the phone first. And like the phone rings and I just thought of you. You beat me again. So it's around us. How do you explain that? Again, it's the energy. Now, so far I haven't given it the name, just call it the energy, right? This energy has been around since the beginning of time. Everybody calls it differently. And in China it's the chi, and in Japan the ki. In India it's the prana. In old Rome it was the spiritus. In Russia they call it the bioplasma. Here we just refer to it as the aura. But it's all the same energy. And there are all these different therapeutic methods that use the energy. Again, you have therapeutic touch, healing touch, you have Reiki, you have all these different methods still dealing with the same energy, just in a different way. I call it biotherapy, short for bioenergy therapy. It's more of the Central or Eastern European name to it, which was later on taken up by Western European countries, and it's pretty much spreading around the world right now. So again, it's coming from living energy, and that's why the name. Excuse me. Okay, so what would be the first thing to do? First, I have to convince you about the existence of this energy, and we'll try to do that from a physical point of view. Okay, so we'll do a quick little meditation, visualization more. So put your feet down, relax your arms. Okay. And take a deep breath, close your eyes, and relax. You're already calm from all the meditations that you have received today, all the little exercises. So this is just a quick visualization. With your eyes shut, I want you to visualize your hand in front of you. Either one will do. Just see your hand. You try to feel the texture of your hand. Concentrate on the firmness of your skin. So it's firm yet flexible. Now what we'll do is visualize a microscope. Put your hand under that microscope. You don't really need a special brand or anything. Just the goal is to look inside our hands. So once you turned it on, this is a special microscope. Since in your minds everything is possible, let's create something that can look inside under your skin. So go under your skin, go inside. Look at a muscle.